Good evening, my friends. This is Paul. I don't know about you guys, but this is a very special day for me. Not only is this my 200th video game review, but it's also on Thanksgiving that I'm recording this. And the game I chose to review for my 200th is none other than Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64, aka the first video game I ever owned. Now, I could easily gush on and say why I think Super Mario 64 is great, but a lot of you would probably accuse me of nostalgia pandering, which I'm not gonna lie, I do love nostalgia, and a lot of times that does influence a lot of things that I like when I praised Banjo-Kazooie being in Smash Brothers. I had a huge love for Banjo-Kazooie. However, ever since I've become a video game reviewer, I have realized that when you review a game, you're asking yourself, do other people like this? Would I recommend this game to someone who doesn't have nostalgia for Super Mario 64? If someone in 2019 is going to be picking up a 1996 game, are they going to find it as enthralling as I did? Well, let's find out. So, first off, I don't know what I was doing there. First off, there's quite the archaic setup for controlling the camera, the controls in general, and the graphics. I am not gonna lie for a minute and say that this system was perfectly implemented. Even back then, I found myself incredibly frustrated with when the camera would just refuse to turn in the direction that I needed it to, so that I could properly line things up in 3D space. And in addition to that, not only would the camera not do what I wanted, but it would make this weird sound if it was going too far, as if the game itself was literally saying, hey, we messed up our camera, we're gonna tell you in the game, instead of just waiting for a critic to say it. Oof, nothing is more insulting than the game insulting its own lack of polish. Now granted, for its time, there wasn't really much they could do. This was the first video game ever with a controllable camera, and admittedly, they did about as good of a job as they could with the limited technology and the lack of know-how. That being said, Banjo-Kazooie came out only 2 years later, and the camera was way better in that game. But I digress. In addition, the graphics haven't aged particularly well, but one thing that has surprisingly stood the test of time is the music. There's not that much music. I mean, this is a 3D Mario game, and most side-scrolling Mario games had 3 or 4 tracks that carried the whole game, and this game is not too much different. However, with the jump to more powerful music software on the Nintendo 64, while it still wasn't powerful enough to capture real instruments, it managed to prove quality enough that you could probably envision the songs being played live, and they would still sound pretty good. In fact, Super Mario Galaxy remixed the tune to Bob-omb Battlefield for one of the galaxies, and it sounds pretty darn similar. The music is both at the same time energetic, but at the same time also extremely soothing and melancholy, especially when you go underwater. This game can be as peaceful as a lullaby or as fast as a marathon, and overall it suits wherever you are in the world absolutely perfectly. So, Super Mario 64 is a 3D platformer. I'm surprised it took me that long to say it. But it's a very non-linear platformer. You see, when Mario first introduced the world to platforming, it was very much a get-to-the-end-of-the-level theme. With Super Mario 64, that theme still stands, except instead of just getting the flagpole, now you have various objectives within the world that grant you a star. And the more stars you have, then the more worlds you can progress to. And instead of going on a boring world map, you have a castle to traverse, and you jump inside paintings. The effect of jumping inside a painting is still technically impressive to this day, with a very impressive ripple effect that, in my opinion, no other game, besides another Mario game, has even come close to duplicating that, wow, it's so cool just to enter a world type of feeling. However, the mission structure is where the game kind of falls apart compared to collectathons later in the 3D platforming genre. You see, Mario 64 has this horrendous problem, with the exception of the 100 coin stars, which is weird, where after you collect a star, you're booted out of the level and taken back to the entrance. As a result, a lot of these levels require you to backtrack to areas that you've already been to several times, and this gets especially annoying when you get to the later levels, which instead of being these big, open, sprawling sandbox-style environments, they become more of a linear obstacle course similar to the Mario games of old. And then at that point you realize, just 2 more years, and then Banjo and Kazooie would have reinvented the formula by allowing you to stay in the level after you collected a Jiggy. Now, the progression system in and of itself isn't terrible. It allows you to basically take the game at your own pace. Over the years, speedrunners and hackers have found wonderful ways to play Super Mario 64 in so many different ways that it almost turns it into a different type of game itself. And for once, I'm speaking from experience, because in this footage that you're seeing right now, I'm playing a pacifist run. Well, mostly pacifist, because I don't really know how to cheat the Bowser fights. And the fact that a game this early on gave you the ability to say, I don't want to play level 1, I want to go straight to level 3. You can do that. Granted, Zelda got away with that too, but to put this into a 3-dimensional space, a 3-dimensional platformer at that, where they were still trying to figure out how is Mario going to hit the blocks in 3D space, this was genius. And to this day, I find that Mario games still haven't been able to nail that sweet spot of freedom versus more structured narrative experiences like the Mario Galaxy games. It's incredible how the game makes you feel like if you go against what we say, then, well, you're gonna pay for it. But you do have the right to challenge the game's systems. For instance, do you want to get that star in the jet stream? Technically you can without the metal cap, but you're going to have to think about it, or you're going to have to go to a community of hackers. Overall, Super Mario 64 is very much a game about discovery and hidden mechanics that I doubt even the game developers themselves had in mind. There's a lot of hidden depth, and once you get used to Super Mario 64's gameplay, then it becomes an almost Jedi-like flow motion of sorts. Mario bounces around and leaps through the world with a lot of gleeful enthusiasm, made all the better by Charles Martinet's amazing performance of Wahoos and Let's-a-goes! Well, okay, that's more of how he sounds in recent games, but you get the point. Overall, this game does a magnificent job of giving Mario a personality, so you feel like you're not just playing as yourself, but you're actually playing as a character on a quest. This game's not exactly heavy on story, but you know, it certainly could have done a lot worse as far as characterizing the main character. Also, a lot of things that we might take for granted nowadays started in Super Mario 64. Hub worlds, for example. That wasn't exactly common before 1996, but now nearly every 3D action platform game of sorts has a hub world as opposed to just get from one level to the next. In addition to that, the movable camera has become pretty much a staple of 3D games, except for Pokemon. For some odd reason, it took them until 2019 to have that. And overall, just this level of freedom, while for a while it seemed like it was never going to come back, has recently seen a resurgence in many games that pretend that it's brand new because they try to improve on the style but bring it back after so long of absence. Overall, Super Mario 64's historical legacy cannot be understated, but to a person playing it today, it's definitely going to have a bit of a learning curve. Not as much as other recent games I've reviewed, but to be able to master Mario's triple jumps and when to wall kick is going to be very hard if you're used to how the new Super Mario Bros. Series or Super Mario Odyssey handles things. The physics system still had a lot of learning to do, and sometimes the way that Mario bumps against the walls, very Game Boy style, doesn't translate very well nowadays. That being said, if I did not want to recommend Super Mario 64 to you, I'd be lying. Now, I normally don't like to review the original game after I've already reviewed the remake of it, and I've reviewed Super Mario 64 DS more than any other game on this channel. However, I feel like Super Mario 64 DS was sort of like trying to create a brand new game out of the assets of Super Mario 64 And so as a result, I made an exception for this because Super Mario 64's engine, on its own, with the limitations of the Nintendo 64 hardware, it felt like an entirely different game as opposed to a game that needed being remade. There's still a lot of joys in playing the Nintendo 64 original or even the Wii U Virtual Console version. The way that Mario moves around and handles feels more natural and fluid with the Nintendo 64's analog stick, and quite a few puzzles actually put the force feedback of the stick to really good use, especially when Mario has to tiptoe. In addition, one of the most technologically amazing things in gaming history happens right at the start of the game, when you see a giant image of Mario's face that talks to you and you can move him around and manipulate him. Super Mario 64 may struggle in the bigger areas of game design, like the camera, the graphics, and the pacing issues, such as why do you get kicked to the start, why are some of the objectives so forced, but the little things are where Super Mario 64 really shines. And maybe it was because they were testing the waters and didn't necessarily have a cohesive plan. They just said, I don't know, let's just throw in a giant disembodied Mario head. Let's not think about the consequences. Let's not think about how it fits in the big picture. Let's just do it, because fans will like it. And honestly, I wish more games would adopt that kind of mentality. That willingness to experiment with something that's weird, but then it ends up paying off in the long run. So with that, I would say that Super Mario 64 is well worth your money. You could probably find it pretty decently on sale, especially if you download the Wii U Virtual Console version for roughly $10, maybe $15, depending on where Nintendo takes the eShop next. But overall, you're in for a satisfying treat. This game hasn't aged perfectly, but it's definitely worth a shot to see where the legacy of 3D gaming truly began. So with that, thank you very much for sticking with me through 200 video game reviews, well, assuming you were around since the beginning. And I'm really thankful for all the support and critiques that I've gotten over the years. So I plan on doing a celebration of the top 100 games I have ever reviewed. So thank you very much in advance if you're one of the people that actually sits through the whole thing. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's see some more great innovations like this that push gaming forward in unprecedented directions. Bye!